The insult cracked through the parade ground like a whip. Dismissed. You'll never wear this uniform with honor. The words hung in the air, sharp, cruel, and final. 100 cadets stood frozen, their boots pressed into the gravel, their eyes fixed on the young man left standing alone. His name was Daniel Hale. His shoulders were squared, but his jaw trembled ever so slightly. The silence around him was worse than the humiliation, the silence of his peers, the silence of the officers, the silence of everyone who should have known better. Daniel's cadet insignia was stripped from his chest with a single tug. The metal pin scraped his collarbone on the way out, leaving a faint sting, as though the uniform itself had rejected him. His career, his future, his honor all dismissed in a breath. And then, a voice raw and commanding broke the silence. "Iron Wolf, stand by." Every head snapped toward the sound. It was not an officer's voice, not a cadet's. It was the voice of a Marine whose presence radiated authority that no academy rank could command. Daniel froze. He knew that name. Iron Wolf. It was a call sign he had carried once, in silence, on missions whispered about, but never acknowledged. But no one here should have known it. Daniel had never looked like the kind of man who carried ghosts. At 24, his face was lean, boyish even. But his eyes were heavier than his frame could bear. In those eyes lived the burning heat of the desert sun, the suffocating dust of faraway battlefields, and the faces of brothers who never made it home. He had served, though no one here believed it. Before stepping onto the polished stone of this academy, he had worn another uniform. He had carried men bleeding on stretchers through streets that reeked of smoke and diesel. He had listened to the deafening silence after explosions, the kind where ringing ears couldn't drown out the cries that followed. When his unit Bravo Company, 2nd Marines lost 12 men in a single night ambush. Daniel carried the weight of their memory like a second set of dog tags, clinking inside his chest. He promised himself he would keep serving, keep their names alive, by forging a future in the officer corps. This academy was supposed to be that future, but the academy didn't see a Marine who had bled and sacrificed. They saw a cadet struggling with protocols he already knew by instinct. A veteran whose silence was mistaken for arrogance, whose scars were mistaken for weakness. And so, in front of everyone, he was dismissed. The officer who had condemned him turned on his heel, ready to leave the humiliation lying where it fell. Bystanders, cadets in crisp uniforms looked away, unwilling to share his disgrace. Some smirked. Others pitied. None spoke. Daniel didn't move. His silence was not surrender. His silence was armor. The Marine, older, broad-shouldered, his uniform heavy with ribbons earned in blood, stepped forward. His boots struck the ground like declarations. His voice carried again, this time louder, steadier. "Iron Wolf, stand by." A shiver moved through the formation. The title was not ceremonial. It was a battlefield call sign given only to those who had earned it under fire, whose actions in chaos had forged unshakable trust. To hear it spoken aloud here, in this polished courtyard, was to drag war into the sterile order of academy life. The officer stiffened. "Sergeant Major, this cadet has been dismissed. You will not—" The Marine cut him off without raising his tone. "That man is no cadet. That man is Iron Wolf. I watched him drag 2 wounded men through a kill zone when the rest of us thought we were already dead. He didn't wait for orders. He didn't ask permission. He stood by when standing meant death." The silence deepened, no longer comfortable for the onlookers. Cadets who moments ago had turned away now shifted, uncertain, some ashamed. The Marine's words carried like scripture. "Dismiss him here if you like. Strip him of pins and titles. but you cannot strip the blood he shed, or the loyalty he earned. That uniform doesn't make him a warrior. His silence does. Daniel's throat tightened, but he stayed silent. He always did. His silence was a language only men like this Marine understood. The officer, red with indignation, barked back. This is an academy. Discipline comes first. Past service is irrelevant to present performance. The Marine's eyes, steel and unblinking, met his. Performance? Then measure him by the weight of the men he carried home. Measure him by the silence of the graves he visits each year. Performance? He already outperformed death. The crowd shifted again. A murmur rippled through the cadets. Not everyone had seen war, but everyone knew the weight of respect when it pressed down on them. And then the Marine turned not to the officer, not to the cadets, but directly to Daniel. His words rang out like a verdict written in stone. Iron Wolf. Stand by. You are not dismissed. The courtyard held its breath. For the first time, Daniel lifted his gaze. His silence cracked not into words, but into presence. His stance changed. His shoulders squared not with defiance, but with honor reclaimed. The officer faltered, his authority suddenly paper-thin against the weight of lived sacrifice. One by one, cadets who had turned away now faced him. A single cadet raised his hand in salute. Then another. Then an entire row. The salutes spread like a flame across the courtyard, until the air itself seemed to tremble under the weight of it. The officer's words were gone, swallowed whole. And Daniel Iron Wolf remained still, silent, the gravity of respect pulling toward him. His silence spoke louder than any protest, louder than any justification. It said, I carried men who never came back. I am still carrying them. It said, dismiss me if you dare. I will never dismiss them. It said, honor does not wear out. 3 quotes lingered in the courtyard that day, words that cadets carried long after, words that spread beyond the academy walls. His silence is his uniform. He already outperformed death. You cannot dismiss the blood he shed. By the time the Marine stepped back, the courtyard had transformed. The officer, faced with a sea of salutes, lowered his eyes. He walked away, his authority trailing behind him like smoke in the wind. And Daniel remained, not triumphant, not vengeful, simply present, silent, standing by, as he always had. There was no cheer, no applause, only a silence so profound it became holy. Because sometimes, the loudest sound in the world is respect unspoken. And so the story lingers. A cadet dismissed, a Marine's roar, and a courtyard transformed into a monument of silent honor. Let this story remind us all, respect cannot be stripped. Sacrifice cannot be erased. And sometimes, the greatest strength is not in shouting, but in standing still, standing by. Where are you watching from tonight? Share your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, subscribe for more stories that honor the unseen battles and the silent heroes who fight them.